Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at gcnlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Hello, everybody. This is Guineith speaking here. Still keeping the seat warm for Vincent Finelli. If you'd like to give us a call, our phone number is 886-582-9933. We'd love to hear from you. Our guest today is Rick Scheben, and he speaks a lot about living off the grid. He's recently written a book about it, which you can find by going to his website, offgridmontana.com. I think that Rick should be there at the moment. How are you, Rick?
I'm doing fine, Guineith. How are you this morning? Or I should say to you in Australia, how are you doing tonight?
It's just after midnight here in Australia. I've had an hour or two sleep though, so I'm okay.
Oh boy.
Yeah, so I'm all right. Something I was looking at that website that you've put up and the book that you've written, and gosh, it looks absolutely amazing. And you really do lead an amazing life where you are. And your hunting gallery, wow. That's quite amazing, all the critters that you have where you are.
Absolutely. We have 13 species of big game animals that walk on the soil. You can't legally hunt them all, but most of them you can. And I'm mostly a bow hunter. 85% of what I've harvested over the years has been with a bow and arrow. And I'm just into nature, Guineith. It's not just hunting and fishing. I do tours on edible medicinal plants. I'm into botany, into ornithology, which is the study of birds. We pick a lot of berries. We pick mushrooms. I know every plant and tree and wildflower on my property. I probably have 50 edible plants and 10 edible berries on my property. We garden, grow our own produce. Everything's about nature and the simple life. And because think about what today's youth is learning in our schools. Besides being socially indoctrinated, they're learning how to push buttons, manage paper, be politically correct. They're not learning the skill sets for survival or thinking with foresight. So that's one of the reasons why my lifestyle is quite interesting, at least for people who want curiosity fulfilled. But most of the time, a lot of people are realizing that we're heading towards an economic catastrophe, a calamity. And people want to be able to control their own destiny. They want a plan B in life. So more and more people are heading more rural in America. And they're going for more health as well.
Well, I would absolutely agree with you there. And I live off the grid in Victoria, in Australia. And it's pretty amazing here. But the biggest critter that I would say that we had out there in the forest, reputedly, I don't think it's quite here, but if you travel about probably 100 or 150 kilometres to the south of here, there's definitely reputed to be actual mountain lions in the forest, pumas in the forest, about 150 kilometres from here. which is not very far, as you well know, considering how far a puma can travel in one night. They can really move. And considering the enormous home ranges that they have, around here, apparently we have a puma population just to the south of here because some GIs during World War II had the pumas as their, mascots for their units. And the war came to an end and they couldn't take the pumas back to the US, and so they let them go. They were ordered to take them out into the forest, and they couldn't put a bullet through their head, and so they let them go. And guess what? It happens to be absolutely perfect puma country around here. With a resident population of, kangaroos that grow to be, 6 or 7 feet tall, some of them, which is definitely appropriate sized mouse for that particular big pussy cat.
Yeah, absolutely. I had no idea that you guys had cougars or mountain lions, pumas, whatever you decide to call them. It's all the same species, really. But that's amazing. I had no idea they were in Australia. That's almost dangerous in a way. Do they have a hunting season where houndsmen can go after the pumas and hunters can harvest them?
The government won't even acknowledge they're there. They really won't. But the locals, you can go to particular towns and buy puma souvenirs. Yeah, but the government will hardly even acknowledge that they're there. They regard it all as being a big local rumour. But like I said, apparently enough locals have seen them for them to have souvenirs in the gift shops in certain towns. Just probably about an hour's drive south of here. So that's pretty amazing, really. And the other thing that's rumoured to be out here in the bush, although I don't know how much truth there is to this one, is even black panthers are rumoured to be in the bush, together with the pumas as well. But I don't know how much more evidence there is for the black panthers, but they're both reputed to be out there. And but like I say, my boys, they were saying, "Oh, come on, Mum, you don't really believe that." And I said, "Why not? It's perfect puma country here. It's semi-arid. It's basically, do you know a problem they are having as we speak with pumas or cougars or mountain lions or whatever, raiding rubbish bins just outside of Los Angeles and Hollywood, in the Hollywood Hills? And it's exactly the same, just about exactly the same ecosystem that we have here as what they have in the Hollywood Hills. It's dry, arid, population of resident large carnivores, and that's just how it is. And I say, I full on believe it. And probably by the time my boys, I would say about my age, there might be enough of them out there for them to be seen on a regular basis that somebody will actually acknowledge that they're there.
Mm-hmm. Well, and we have the same official authority narrative when it comes to the non-indigenous wolves here in Montana. We have a situation where the so-called authorities went up to the northern part of the continent, got extra large wolves, paid a fortune for them from the Canadian government, money that we don't even have, that we're printing, that we're $20+ trillion in debt, and they put them in the lower 48, especially in states like Montana, not just to kill livestock, but to kill elk and deer. And a lot of these wolves hunt for sport, and they just leave the animal unconsumed. And the official authorities, the biologists and the Fish and Game and a lot of these people, all they care about is their paychecks and pensions, and they don't want to stand for principle in a lot of cases. Well, now they're starting to admit that they've done that because we are overrun with wolves. we had a heck of an elk hunt outside of Yellowstone National Park for years, which would feed so many Montana families, and now they're almost gone. There's not a lot left. So in the National Forest Service here in Montana, we still have elk, but the majority of the large elk herds are on the big ranches where they have the ability to shoot the wolves and control the predator situation, which in the National Forest we do not have. So, yeah, this narrative from official authorities of not admitting what's happening is very common, unfortunately, and this is why you have to take the word of the locals, the people who are out in the bush, and the people who, been there, done that, and seen it. So I agree with...
they live there.
Pardon me?
They live there. They absolutely live there, in the bush.
Absolutely.
And they would know what creatures are there, where they are, and their location. And especially, I actually trained in environmental science at the University of Melbourne. And I learnt about all these ecological issues, and I learnt about, habitats and what creatures are suited to what habitats,
Mm-hmm.
And this habitat that we have here is absolutely perfect, cougar country. Absolutely perfect, because there's just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of square kilometres of eucalyptus. The canopy is probably about between 50 and 60, 70% open, okay? You've got a nice sort of, in the actual state park forest, you've got, a reasonably open understory, but with enough cover to provide camouflage for that sort of large predator. And as well as the kangaroos and the wallabies get to be probably about 3 or 4 feet tall. So, maybe when people think of a wallaby, they think of a tiny creature like about 1 foot or 18 inches tall, but around here they definitely can grow to be 3 or 4 feet tall. The kangaroos can grow to be 6 or 7 feet tall. That's when they're stretched up. And you've also got a reasonably large feral goat population. So all of those are absolutely marvellous prey for something like a cougar. And we're heading into a break. I'll see you on the other side, Rick Scheben. Hello there, everyone. This is Guineith Isaac speaking, keeping the seat warm for Vincent this week once again. And we have Rick Scheben with us, and we are discussing the wildlife that can actually occur in the forest. Rick, another creature during the break that I realised is reputed to be in the forest out where we are. This one is reputed to be probably, more towards Melbourne, and thus far only been reported in the coastal areas of Victoria and Gippsland, which is probably about 300 or 400 kilometres from here. But there are actually reputed to be thylacines out there in the forest, and I don't know if you know what a thylacine is, or if you have, your favourite search engine, you can maybe Google this, but if you Google Tasmanian tiger or thylacine, you'll come up with an image of a creature that is absolutely extraordinary. And I don't know if you have the internet on in front of you now.
I do,
but you might want to do that.
Yeah, I do, but I do know what they are. I've read articles on it, and I think we had them. They had one in a zoo in the up to the mid 1900s, maybe early 1900s. I've read a few articles on that, but whether they're still in the wild,
they're reputed to be extinct.
Right.
But they've been seen in country Victoria as recently as just a few years ago. Probably, I think the last sighting was about 5 or 6 years ago. And, there's people out there who actually go out there, with the cameras. You've got the Bigfoot and the Yeti. We've got thylacines. They're trying to photograph the big black panthers and the pumas and the thylacines. And there's bags and bags of anecdotal evidence from people who live in the forest who absolutely know the difference between a feral dog and a thylacine, or between a house cat and a puma. And so if anyone wants to go camping in the bush in Victoria, you'll probably be okay because so far these creatures are quite rare, and they're very, very shy of humans. You probably won't see one. But like I say, it's the people who live in the forest who tend to see them, the people who actually live there, because, of course, the wildlife gets used to you. It'll come right up to your fence, when you actually live there. Yep. Anyway, none of that is actually what we were going to talk about today, was it?
Well, I'll tell you what. Why don't you give me a chance to respond to some of the things that you've said?
Yeah.
That might take us to the direction that you want us to go. How's that sound, Guineith?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay, first of all, I just want to finish your talk about wildlife. I have trail cams all over my property. You mentioned you were on my website this weekend. And I don't know if you went to the picture gallery for the trail cam section, but I got pictures of tons of mountain lions, grizzly bears, black bears, you name it, I get pictures of it.
I saw the one of the wolf.
I got it all. I mean, we got it all here in northwest Montana. And even last year, I was bow hunting on my property on the river bottom here, and I had a big boar grizzly walk 50 yards away from me, and I'm just standing there with my bow, hoping that the wind doesn't change and he doesn't know I'm there. But he walked right by me and dunked his head in the river and started fishing for salmon right in front of me, and it was pretty surreal. So the point I'm trying to make is I have trail cams all over my property. And if, for those of you in Australia, whether you're trying to catch that extinct cat or anywhere in the world who might be listening, get trail cams. You can go on Cabela's.com. Any outdoor store should have them. You can get them online all over the place. And, boy, it's so much fun to check your trail cams and see what you caught, especially with a lot of these animals being nocturnal. So that would be my first recommendation. And then I want to talk about something you mentioned about my book and the controlled narrative of the book-burning years that we live in after the break.
Okey-doke, that sounds great. I'll see you then. Hello there, everyone. This is Guineith Isaac speaking here. And I'm keeping the seat warm for Vincent this week. We have on the line Rick Scheben. He's going to be with us today and also tomorrow. And we've got some really, really important topics to discuss. But first of all, I would like to let Rick talk about the book that he's written, which I believe is really, really important for anybody who wants to become involved in the preparedness or off-grid lifestyle, because Rick has actually done it. He is a former resident of the Big Apple, New York City, and he actually went totally off-grid and moved up to Montana, and so, he has actually done it, and he's made a success of it, and he now lives up in the Rocky Mountains, and it's, it is beautiful, but it's also very harsh, and there's a lot of challenges out there. Rick, would you like to tell us something about your book?
You bet, Guineith. Thank you. Well, for the benefit of the listeners, I want to mention the fact that one of the main things that I talk about in the book is the financial, economic, social, and political reasons why we need to be more self-sufficient as American people. But I really tackle and address political correctness because everything is being skewed, all the truth is being tarnished, and all the Hegelian dialect, the professional wordsmithing, media propaganda, the subliminal messaging that we're getting in every movie and sitcom and TV show today is really not just attacking truth, but rigging the game and taking away the people's choice to govern themselves. And you mentioned my book earlier, but I also want to mention some of the things that I've had to deal with the book. For example, the publishing companies. Now, and let me back up here. It's not just TV, newspaper, magazines. It's also production companies and publishing companies that basically control 95% of the information. So the powers that be said my book was out of stock. They've misspelled the title. They've deleted hundreds of 5-star reviews, and they're still replacing positive reviews with poor reviews. They're doing that in an incremental system, so I don't notice it or the people don't notice it. And I've even seen them delete 5-star reviews right in front of me. They're deleting words to sections, to chapters. I've even had one time, a couple of years ago, an Amazon employee called me and said, I love your book, but the powers that be are going to do everything to make sure it doesn't get out to the public. So this is the book-burning, controlled narrative years that we're living with in the Western world. So I want to make it very clear that we have to realize that when the powers that be lower the bars of standards and expectations, they're purposely insulting the work ethic, the ability and the intelligence of all these people shoved into group identity politics, which is made to degrade and disrespect the people. You never empower a nation or a group by lowering the bars of standards and expectations. In fact, I have with me to show you the narratives that the mainstream media tries to push. There's a magazine, I won't even mention their name, that just came out with a article. Apparently it's 4,500 words, called American Blackout, and they talk about how the American eclipse is racist because the path of the eclipse that's happening today in a couple of hours does not travel through enough black people's property.
Oh, man!
Yeah, and this is, so when I talk about the book-burning years and the controlled narrative, we're getting to the point where we've gone beyond silly, past stupid, and we're living in a
ridiculous zone.
That is literally, Guineith, a
ridiculous. That's
politically
stupid.
Correct. It's a politically correct Twilight Zone episode.
Mm-hmm.
And it's in virtual reality memes, and that's the best way to put we're living in 1984 on steroids is what we're doing.
Yeah, I would absolutely fully agree. You know, it's so sad out there. The stories that you get coming out are just absolutely horrific, and I thought it was bad here in Australia. It's probably actually in a lot of ways worse here in Australia because the people here in Australia, by and large, are not armed. And that means that when the government comes along and does its really brutal fascist dictatorship stuff, the people really, in a lot of ways, are powerless to resist. Mm-hmm. You know, or that they're not able to resist with the power that they would like to. When the government does its terrible stuff that it does when it comes through. And they destroy families, you know. They absolutely wreck lives. And there's people that are actually, you know, their whole families are destroyed. They lose their houses, they lose their cars, they lose their ability to drive. A motor vehicle in this country is a lifeline, you know. And the police around here, anyway, that they're such a bunch of fascist dictators, they can't seem to go and arrest the local pedophiles. But if you're caught without a motor vehicle registration, God only help you.
Mm-hmm.
That's the truth of it,
yep.
You know. And people have to realize that these people are evil. They're not interested in your best interests. They're interested in maintaining their status quo. And their status quo involves your enslavement. And if you're not enslaved, if you are able to live independently, if you're able to raise your own food, And if you are able to live on your own land and defend your own land, that actually works against their interests. They don't like it. Yes, that's certainly how it is around here. I don't know what it's like in your part of the world.
Well, you hit the nail on the head, Guineith. I'll tell you, there was, and I've mentioned this on the air on many a show, there was a documentary about 10, 15 years ago in South L.A. where some rich guy let the people of a certain neighborhood borrow 14 acres, and they built this gorgeous garden. I want to make a long story short. There was synergy, there was independence, there was communication. People were learning. They wanted to learn more about gardening. People were coming up to them and talking to them, and the powers that be said, "Hey, we don't want self-sufficiency. We don't want synergy. We don't want communication. We want infighting and chaos." So guess what? They plowed down all these poor people's garden, and in South LA, it's mostly minority. It was everybody. It was Hispanic. It was black. It was white. It was multiple, different genders. It was, the powers that be. And I'm going to kind of go off into a tangent, but I'm going to take the context of the story that you just started here. You look at one of the best movies Australia's ever made is kind of a semi-musical with a story called The Sapphires. And we own this movie, and it's a great movie. And it talks about how the indigenous people in the beginning were screwed by, of course, they mention the whites. But it's the same thing that happened here with our indigenous people, with the American Indian. It's not color of skin. That's what they want to do. They want to divide us by race, gender, sex, religion, ideology, philosophy, generation. It's the aristocracy versus the serfs. Okay? This is what people have to realize. That's what it's all about. They play the bottom 93% against each other, so we have infighting, so we have chaos, so we have all this, because they need to divide and conquer. And what divide and conquer does, folks, it lowers the bars of standards and expectations, and I cannot say this enough. This is their home run pitch by the aristocracy. It's group identity politics. This is why you always hear me say standing for principle. The same rules, laws, accountability for everybody. Truth is the second one. You have to be willing to be hated for saying the truth versus wanting to be loved for blowing smoke up people's keister. And third thing is, and might be the hardest, if someone does it, you should do it too. And then once we all get tired of being told what to do, what to say, what to think, and what to do with other people, then we come together and have practice what you preach laws. But I would like to read sometime today or tomorrow, it would take me about 3 or 4 minutes, Guineith, an excerpt from the book regarding how when you lower the bars of standards and expectations, what it does to the populace regarding insulting, degrading, and disrespecting. So when we have a moment, please give me...
Would you like to do that now? I don't know if we have time to do that before the next break.
Sure. Let me... If not, I could always finish it. But what all this fighting and infighting does, folks, it creates... The message from the elite is to make us submissive. It's to break your will. And that's why they use all these politically correct buzzwords like racist, bigot, sexist, misogynist, homophobe, intolerant, violent, hater. And then they demonize, discredit, and delegitimize us individually. What this does, it destroys America. It rewards mediocrity and ingenuity, productivity, innovation, knowledge. It's all gone. It's all been thrown out the window with the baby in the bathwater. So I'll start it, and I'll try to make a long story short by skipping a line here or there. But it's an NFL analogy. For those of you who might be listening in Australia, the NFL is the National Football League. It's American football, not what you call football, which we call soccer. So I just wanted to get that straight. But there's two teams. One's called the Montana Average Joes. The other one is called the San Francisco Excuses. Let's say the Montana Average Joes were all white male heterosexuals with a Christian name. Let's say they were all poor/middle class. They never got a job, a college education, a house, or a down payment or a home from their daddy or their government. Let's say they all earned what little they had. Now, the San Francisco Excuses, which is the name of the other team, which I will obviously finish at the end of the break, but this is so important to realize how the elite are playing us. We're being duped. The elite is basically creating division. And I'll finish this on the other side of the break.
Okey-doke. I'll look forward to hearing about it. Hello, this is Guineith Isaac speaking here, sitting in for Vincent Finelli this week. And we have on the line Rick Scheben, and he was reading an excerpt from his book. Now, we've got a short segment before the top of the hour, but it's probably going to be about 10 minutes. So I'll let you have, read what you want to read there.
All right, Guineith. Well, I already outlined the beginning part of it, where you had the Montana Average Joes, which is one of the NFL teams. And they're basically poor/white male heterosexuals with a Christian name. And now we have the San Francisco Excuses, the name I just picked out of thin air, for the other team. And they're made up of different backgrounds, and they all qualify for a victim group or protectionist group status, which should be derogatory terms. In other words, they had certain skin pigmentation, sexual orientation, or were female. Now, let's say they all got together with the referees before the game, and they said they were given protectionist status by our government. Some called their attorneys and sued more often than the Montana Average Joes. Some sued just when other players from around the league told a joke. Some sued because the Average Joes got an earlier promotion or a higher paycheck, even though the Average Joes were more qualified and produced better results. So I can throw in thousands of examples, but you pretty much get the point. So the football game begins. Kickoffs are canceled. The ref says the San Francisco Excuses gain immediate advantage because of their coveted status. The Excuses, as per the refs, only have to run 50 yards for a touchdown, while the Montana Average Joes have to run 100 yards for a touchdown. The game continues, and despite their handicap, the Average Joes lose by only 3 points. So my questions to you are, and this is very important, this really puts the story in context. Do you respect the San Francisco Excuses for their win? Question number 2,
No.
Do you think this creates synergy for the fans, players, and owners? Next question, do you think this makes our country better and stronger regarding work results and work ethic? Next question, Do you think over time people will continue to respect the game, the players, the rules, and the refs?
No.
Next question, do you think that an individual who plays by special rules, laws, and accountability just because of victim group status will be respected?
No.
So do you think the NFL would prosper or even survive like it has for the past several decades if we had a different set of rules, laws, and accountability for different players and different teams?
Absolutely not.
Right. This is why...
You've got to have one set of rules for everybody.
Right. This is why the NFL is so popular, because they choose the best players with the highest qualifications, which puts out the best results. In this case, the results are about scoring, speed, coordination, desire, determination, athletic ability, and winning. Oops. Shouldn't I have said winning? It's probably politically incorrect these days. My bad. But going back to the above questions, of course the answer to all these questions is an obvious no. So what has been happening in our country and the Western world, including Australia for the last 40 years, is a major lowering of the standards and the rigging of the game. When you continue to lower the bar to create the illusion of equality, you bring down the quality of life for the whole country. As this phenomenon occurs, the value of everything diminishes by the day, and that's why I always talk about the law of diminishing returns. As the powers that be continue to lower the bars of standards and create division, our values get more clouded. And for generations, the middle class have had the majority of the equity in their homes, but over the course of a few years, home equity in the middle class has been dropping like a seagull with a heart attack. The act of harmonizing the economy has ruined the middle class. Basically, group identity politics is you're being used, you're being duped, you're being played. We are allowing the elite to poison us against ourselves. Guineith, I'd like you to comment after the break.
Yep, well, this is the top of the hour. So we'll have the news, and then we'll get back and I'd love to comment. Yep. Oh, there we go. Hello, everybody. This is Guineith Isaac speaking here, sitting in this week for Vincent Finelli. He's got other things which are occupying him at the moment. And we're here with Rick Scheben for hour number 2 of USA Prepares. And I believe that we were just about to talk about, the protected group. I don't know if you deal with this in your book, but there's also a flip side to that, and that is the targeted groups. Maybe you would like to talk with us about the targeted groups that those people who like to call themselves the government would, define maybe us as.
Well, Guineith, this is one of the reasons why I just wait until I'm sure you're done talking, because I know we have an extended delay because of U.S. and Australia. So anyway, and that's one of the reasons why I talk about fascism, and you and I talked about that last week. It's just, like, for example, I read an article just this morning that Monsanto's trying to declassify Roundup or glyphosate to be safe because there's so many scientists that have come out with showing proof that it creates cancer. It's a carcinogen. And even Angela Merkel is supporting it because of the tax dollars, meaning the Monsanto position. And the reason why I said that is because the powers that be, the big government and the big oligarchies and the big monopolies, it doesn't even matter if they're creating antitrust breaches. Nothing matters anymore. All that matters is the dollars. And the people, especially the bottom 93%, has no say anymore. Whether it comes to money, freedom, liberty, their health, they are basically, and that's why I use the term aristocracy versus the serfs. And one of my favorite examples to use for fascism is Bezos with Amazon gets $1.48 from the taxpayers from each box shipped. Nestle, a huge company, paid $500 for a permit to steal 27 million gallons of water from California when all the people in California can't even dig a well, the farms are going dry, they're losing their livelihood. And see, this is the protectionist. So when I say protectionist status, that's not necessarily just based on all the divisions like race, gender, sex, religion, ideology, philosophy, generation, etc. It's based on the aristocracy where they do not have to abide by the same rules, laws, and accountability. And this is why we need to wake up the masses, because we're at the point that the silent majority has to read, research, and grab a microphone. If they don't, then freedom, liberty, time, health, which are the 4 main things, general things that the middle class can never buy back, will never be gone. You'll never have a chance of prosperity. What the elite are doing, folks, is closing the door on your opportunity to not just govern yourself, but to create prosperity, to control your own health, and control your own destiny in general. Guineith?
Yeah. Well, what would we be able to do about this? Because it's obvious that they want us dead. They want our families destroyed. They want to turn our kids against us. That is absolutely so blindingly obvious. And, it seems to be particular groups more than others. It seems that if you belong to certain groups, you've more or less got your get-out-of-jail-free card. And, you probably could, do the most heinous crime in the middle of the Super Bowl and get away with it, because you would be excused on something of, oh, well, he can't help it, she can't help it, yada, 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 because they name your victim group. Basically, it's insane. But I was just having to respond to somebody on YouTube just this last week, and it was a communist. This guy was a real red socialist fascist. and he was on his kill the cops bent, okay? And I said, listen, you can't do that. You can't post like that because, you know, if I posted like that, I would have a SWAT team at my gate, okay? They know me. They hate me. I would never advocate anything like that, okay? Because for one thing, it would be stupid. And for another thing, I believe in an eternity, and I believe that everybody should have the maximum course to seek after God. If people go killing people, that sends them on a quick path to hell, you know, especially if the other guy's in the wrong. Okay? His opportunities for repentance on this earth are gone as soon as he kicks the bucket and hits the dust. You know, so it's, you know, it's just amazing. But these people, they're going around and they're posting this sort of stuff on the internet, and then they're getting us to try and agree with them. And it's insane. And I'm sure that they're trolls. I'm sure that the purpose of it is so that they can have some goods against us that we posted this yada yada yada, so that then the goons from your local goon squad can come around and arrest us. And it's so transparent. These people must have an IQ of about 80. It's so transparent, and it's just gobsmacking, you know. But the fact is, they do post this sort of stuff repeatedly, all the time, all day long, and nothing ever seems to happen to them.
Well, you know, this is part of the controlled narrative. The powers that be, the CIA spooks, the 17 intelligence agencies, the liberals, the Democrats, you know, they've all been hijacked by the globalists. They're all bought and paid for it. So their objective is to cultivate followers and not independent thinkers. And this is why group identity politics is their biggest weapon, because they want to insult the work ethic, insult the ability, insult the intelligence of different groups and saying, hey, you can't compete, your work is suboptimal. This is purposely done to degrade and disrespect, which eliminates synergy. And this is part of the divide and conquer handbook, lowering the bars of standards and expectations, okay? Most words in America have been hijacked by definition to use as a tool to divide the American people. And this is why when you lower those bars of standards and expectations and reward mediocrity for decade after decade after decade, ingenuity, productivity, and innovation is gone. So all these fascists, all the socialists, all the communists, all the elite aristocracy, what they're trying to do, whether it be dictatorships, totalitarianism, all these words of government control is all top-down, centralized control with no accountability for the top. In most cases, they're unelected, or if they are, it's been fixed. The only way we're going to change things is to do it from the bottom. And this is one of the reasons why I do all these radio shows and talks. It's not that I'm more intelligent than any of you listeners. It's because I do a lot of reading, and I see what's coming, and we all have to have foresight. And this is why I say we all need to shoot pool and play chess, because the best pool and chess players have foresight. They can look 2, 3, 4, 5 moves ahead. And now they're so desperate, the elite, that they're telegraphing their punches and their moves. It's very easy to see that this caste system that they are creating through totalitarian dictatorships, social economic control, is a suppression by those elite people to the bottom 93% at least. And this is why we have to read and research and speak up. We have to grab the microphone. Guineith?
Yeah. And you're right, absolutely right. It is all about divide and conquer. That's absolutely it. And, you know, there's a book, I think I mentioned this last time, 1984. That should be required reading for everybody who is interested in pursuing the survivalist lifestyle. If you haven't read that book, 1984, by George Orwell, you need to read it. And you need to recognize that this is their playbook. And as well as that, you need to read Animal Farm, okay? and Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. Animal Farm is also written by George Orwell, and Fahrenheit 451, and probably, what's that one by Huxley? I just forget the name of it. Yeah, I think it's right on the tip of my tongue. I'm sure you know the book that I'm talking about by Aldous Huxley. And, you know, it's these books, they used to be read in high school by every high school kid, which is why that just about everybody of your generation and my generation, they know the playbooks because they were told the playbooks when they were 14, 15, and 16. And then they grew up and they saw the world and they said to themselves, oh, and then the penny dropped that this was the world that they were dealing with, and they got a clue very, very quickly. And so I think, you know, I do appreciate that there are a lot of younger people who are becoming interested in the prepper survivalist lifestyle. And I think you're right. I think that this is the route the best route by which the 97% of people who are not in the club in some measure, this is the best option for any of us surviving. Because from what I can see of them, you know, toning up around here anyway, they have a population in this shire of around about 20,000 people, and they have maybe 30 government employees, including 8 policemen, to control those 20,000 people. And it's a no-brainer that they're going to focus on the towns. Hello there, this is Guineith Isaac speaking, sitting in for Vincent from Australia. We have Rick Scheben with us right now. And Rick, I wanted to comment. I've noticed something about living in this local area. Most of the people who live in town have reticulated services. They live on the grid. They have electrical supply. They have smart meters. They have fluoridated town water. And guess what? Most of them do not have a freaking clue what is going on. And you look at the town people, and 99% of them are in their own little world. They've got their bowls club, they've got their golf tournament, they've got their, you know, little church meetings, and they all seem to be perfectly happy. They are almost totally oblivious to what is actually going on out there in the universe. And these towns are not particularly big. They might have 900 or 1,000 residents at the most. And yet they live in their own little bubble that as soon as you go out of the city, of the town limits, okay, and you start to speak to the station owners, the ranchers, the smallholders, the hippies who live on 20, 40 and 60 acres and 100 acres of land, you get a totally different story of what's actually going on here. They generally do not have reticulated grid services. They generally generate their own electricity, and they collect their own rainwater for the purposes of drinking water, okay? Of course it's not fluoridated. Of course it's not. That would be stupid. But you know what? I have noticed that with just speaking to people, the people around here who get it almost invariably live off the grid. Have you noticed that where you are?
Well, absolutely. I mean, just think about GMO foods alone. I just want to address some of the things you said. 96% of Monsanto shareholders voted to not disclose the ingredients in their foods and their seeds and and everything, including glyphosate and Roundup. How about fluoride?
Well, they know what they're doing. They know they're poisoning us.
Absolutely. China labels fluoride as a pesticide. It's often the main ingredient in rat poison. There's zero research of any benefits. Zero. It causes tooth decay, cancer, brain lesions, makes people sterile and docile. I mean, we can go on and on and on and on. The more you live off-grid, the more you live with nature, the more you become a thinker. And I'm not saying that there's an IQ difference between urban, suburban, and rural. I'm just saying that most people are realizing that they cannot control their own destiny because America was built on hard work, effort, proven results, and qualifications. And now it's all about group identity politics. And for the bottom 93%, for those of you who are Americans second and your group identity politics first, let me ask you, 69% of Americans don't even have $1,000 in savings. 50% of people can't even come up with $1,000. Okay? And that means selling everything they've got in America. Most people are living hand to mouth, month to month, week to week. They are not controlling their own destiny. And that's one of the reasons why the biggest cause of death in America for people 50 and under is drug overdose, because we have a nation of despair. There is not a bigger barometer or statistic that will show that we're in a nation of despair right now because we're losing our options. And that's one of the reasons why me, Guineith, the USA Prepares team, Vincent, Finelli, everybody, and all the new media is talking about ideas and solutions, which we do. In fact, we should spend a whole show on that one of these days, Guineith, just talking about ideas and solutions, just rattling them off. And
I would love that.
Okay. Well, if you want to do that tomorrow, let's do that.
I was going to say, why don't we do that tomorrow?
You betcha.
Because, I think we've pretty well covered everything that's wrong, although there is a bunch of stuff because this is, Revelation, the book of Revelation in the Holy Bible, talks about a beast that will rise at the end of time. And I think, I was speaking with my children about this because we've been fighting the beast for years. And it's really sad. I was saying we might not have fought the whole beast, but we fought the front end, the bit with the teeth and the claws. Yeah, I think we're heading into another break, are we?
We are.
Hello, everybody. This is Guineith Isaac here, sitting in for Vincent this week. And we have Rick Scheben with us. And I would actually love to begin discussing some solutions in this last half hour, if that's okay with you, Rick.
Absolutely.
Yep. And to start with, I think that it's going to be really difficult for anyone to survive in a collapse situation if you don't have a nice parcel of land in a probably in a rural location somewhere. We discussed a bit last week about what to look for in a piece of land. Let's assume now that we've got the land and it's got a good water supply and it's maybe got a few trees on it. How should you go about selecting what crops, what vegetables, what fruit trees, what nut trees to grow where you are? How should you go about that? If you'd like to go into that, that
Absolutely.
would be great.
Yeah, not a problem. When I was looking for land, I was looking for some acreage. I was looking for a stream. I was looking for a good aquifer where I can dig a well and put a pump and get good, clean, uncontaminated water. I was looking for varied topography, not just a lot of trees, but a lot of different species of trees, a lot of different species of edible and medicinal plants. So I wanted northern slopes, I wanted southern slopes, I wanted ridges, I wanted draws, I wanted meadows. I wanted as much variety or character in land as possible. And when you have a little bit of acreage, obviously it gives you some privacy as well, because that's a commodity that is getting very expensive in most of the Western world and even in America. So those are the main things that I look at. Regarding the crops, I use raised bed gardens, okay? And I have I supplement with we have goats, so I supplement with goat poop and chicken poop. Everything that's organic, from eggshells to tomato stems to leftover spinach, kale, whatever we don't use goes into the compost pile and gets reused. I have 2 small greenhouses that I built, and that's where we put our warm weather crops, things like tomatoes and zucchinis and cucumbers and other squashes. And outside I grow things like asparagus. As we get older, we're eating more leafy type stuff like spinach, lettuce, heirloom lettuce, and all of our seeds are heirloom or open pollinated, so we can reharvest it if we want. Right now I'm letting a big crop of last year's carrots go to seed, so I'm going to get volunteer seeds all over the place. My lettuce seeds, my spinach seeds, sometimes Swiss chard and kale actually regenerates the following year because they're an heirloom or open pollinated variety. So if the crapper hits the fan, that is absolutely necessary to do that. Now, land offers you the ability to be a thinker, to be self-sufficient, and as I mentioned earlier in the show and on many shows, I talk about how today's youth is, by design, being taught how to push buttons, manage paper, and be politically correct. What we need to do is go back in time and relearn those lost 19th century skills, but dovetail them with 21st century technology, and that's where my electronic solar array comes in. Guineith?
Yep, I absolutely fully agree. And the other thing that our young people are getting taught to do is not just how to push buttons on computers, but how to push buttons on people as well. And, yeah, that's something that happens, with young people from time to time. Where we are, okay, is almost the opposite ecosystem to where you are. Where you are, it's very, very cold during the winter. And, compared to where we are, it would be quite temperate during the summer, okay? The temperature that you were describing of about 90 degrees would be a lovely spring day where we are. During the summer where we are, it's a semi-arid climate. It gets to easily the low 40s to mid-40s for weeks on end in the middle of summer as a normal, regular thing. Okay? That's in Fahrenheit, probably between 105 and 110, 111 Fahrenheit. 4 weeks on end during the summer, every day. And at night time, often not going below 20 degrees at night. The place just absolutely bakes. And then it's really, really important to have a really, really good water supply, because during that summer you can have an evaporation of 1.2 meters of level from any open water source, like, for instance, a dam or a pond. The level will go down 1.2 meters over the period of the summer from evaporation alone. And that can be quite scary if you're not used to it and you think you've got loads of water, and then suddenly one day the water is just not there because it's evaporated. That's we are, although we're in the southern hemisphere, and probably all the books say that you should have a north-facing slope to catch the maximum amount of sun. We actually have a south-facing slope for the deliberate purpose that it's a little bit out of the sun, okay? And the elevation difference between the front of the block and the back of the block on our place is something like 15 meters, but it's 15 meters over probably, almost 3/4 of a kilometre from the bottom of the valley to the highest point on the land. And when I moved on to this place, I bought outright the first 20 acres, which was freehold allodial title. And then I noticed that there was 40 acres next door, which didn't seem to be used. And I made inquiries, and I found out that it was actually originally owned by the one family who had got busted for growing hemp a number of years ago. And when the parents owned the land that I had bought, and the son owned the land next door, and when the parents were busted, the son fled, and he was never seen or heard from again, except that a number of years after that he died of cancer without leaving issue. That made the land next door intestate land. And so we've got the 40 acres next door that I'm adversely possessing, and the 20 acres that we are on. And that's something that's quite interesting to explain to people, but it means that in total we have 60 acres of land here with a creek valley running straight through the middle of it, and for much of the year that's a dry creek. Right now there's a little bit of water in it. Last year it flowed for about probably 8 months of the year. And this is the difference in climate. We have different challenges to what you would have. For us, keeping water in the landscape is a priority. For you, probably being able to adequately shed water off the landscape would be more of a priority. This is how you have to adjust according to the climate that you're in. That said, a lot of the staple crops are similar. We also grow a lot of kale here. I probably have several hundred kale plants in the garden at the moment. And that's wow. in a garden space of about 6 meters by 12 meters. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. But the type of kale that we have is a Mediterranean kale. Deals very well with a hot climate and does not bolt to seed easily, and it's called Chowmoulia. I think I mentioned this last time. We also have Swiss chard, although it doesn't grow so well here. We have lettuce, and of course, during the summer, we're able to grow abundant cucurbits without any problem whatsoever, without any need for hot housing. And probably the cucurbits, that's the zucchinis, the pumpkins, the butternut pumpkins, and this year I might even try some cucumbers, watermelons and such like. All grow really, really well, except that you have to put them into a well-composted soil because the soil here is granite soil and it's absolutely pathetic. And it's in a eucalyptus forest, and what little nutrition there is in the soil gets sucked up by the gum trees, by the eucalyptus trees. And so that's why we have to have our beds enclosed, most of them, to keep the eucalyptus trees from robbing the soil. And but that said, you're absolutely right, in that you have to take account of where you are. Rick, that's would you like to say anything about that?
You bet. Right now we have 3 days coming of 90 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about 32 roughly degrees centigrade, and
yep.
That, to me, is brutal hot, and that's one of the reasons I live in the Northern Rockies. When I lived in Missoula, Montana for 19 years, 15 years of it, I was living in the cedar A-frame, which was beautiful. I lived in the outskirts of Missoula, overlooking the Bitterroot River on 12 acres, and I bow hunted out my backyard, and I had tons of fun. But the house was faced south-southwest. Most people come to Montana, they think, oh, it's so cold, you got to face everything south-southwest. If I didn't have a daylight basement to live in, I couldn't have lived in it. It was so hot. So I faced the cabin I'm living in now that you saw on the website, northwest, because people need to realize it takes a lot more energies or BTUs to cool a home than it does to heat one. What?
Yep. Absolutely right. We're heading into another break, and we'll be back in just a moment. Hello, this is Guineith Isaac here, keeping the seat warm for Vincent this week, once again, and we have Dr. You're not a doctor, but, you're a very clever guy. We have Rick Scheben with us. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Yeah, so the garden, I would say, is absolutely the heart and soul of the preparedness lifestyle. And if you're in a circumstance where you cannot move out to the country for whatever reason, it might be health, it might be economic, or whatever, I would still strongly advise that people put in at least a small vegetable patch.
I agree.
Yep.
Absolutely. Look at today's potatoes sprayed with chemicals to slow down budding shoots and rot. So many things you buy in the store are radiated, which destroys nutrition and vitamins. I mean, just look at enzymes alone. They have a temperature, pH, and ranges and sensitivities. When you eat raw, you cleanse and you release toxins. If you eat raw foods that's not cooked over 130 degrees Fahrenheit, or if you do cook over 130 degrees Fahrenheit, you kill the enzymes. Enzymes act as catalysts for biochemical reactions, which aids in digestion and nutrient support. So it's so important to live off the garden in your summer months, because think about all the people who are listening to this program who has problems with their immune system. It deals with inflammation, circulation, allergies, infection, detoxifications, cancers, and tumors. The Journal of American Medical Association just came out just not that long ago, said that, and they admitted this, 30% of drugs approved by the FDA are seriously dangerous. This is why alternative medicine like naturopath and homeopathy and just harvesting your own edible medicinal plants is so important, Guineith.
Yep, that's absolutely the truth. And also, if anyone's really going to go into a preparedness lifestyle, this is something that I'm beginning to do this winter. Winter around here, because it's cold, but we generally don't have snow. And, you might get a few weeks in the middle of winter where the temperature doesn't go above, 10 degrees centigrade day or night. And at that time of the year, you'll get like a long run of nights of like -3, -4, -5 degrees centigrade. And at the moment, we're into that part of the year where the daffodils are blooming and you might get the occasional late frost. So it's not quite time to put in the cucurbits and tomatoes yet, but I'll probably be starting some in a hot box fairly soon, probably in the next few days. But, fruit and nut trees, because something that a lot of people don't take account of is that in a survival situation, you need food to provide vitamins and minerals. You also need food that will fill you up, okay? And food that the kids can snack on and, feel as if they've actually had a snack, like something like an apple or maybe an orange, handful of tree nuts like walnuts or almonds or hazelnuts, for instance, depending on your climate. And here, we're very, very fortunate because we do have quite cold winters. We will get enough chill hours to grow things like hazelnuts and walnuts and apples and peaches. And we have the sunshine hours to where if there's a warmer place, we can actually grow things like passion fruit as well. And, something, I think that's pretty well the end of the show, or heading into the last segment.
That should do it, Guineith. I'll talk to you tomorrow.
I think we're at the end of the show, aren't we?
We are.
Oh, I'll have to see you tomorrow then.
You bet.
Okay, well, you have a wonderful day, won't you?
And you have a wonderful night and get some sleep.
Okay, thanks for that. See you later.
Bye-bye.